The college football season seriously needs to slow down because we're already in October. Week 5 is in the books, meaning next week is already week 6. This was a pretty wild college football weekend. There were a number of close finishes and even a few upsets. We also had our first weekend where there were a number of teams on byes. After the first month of the season, here's how my top 25 looks. I know I keep saying until Georgia loses, I'm going to keep having them in number 1, but they're making it really hard for me to stand by my word. They moved to 5-0 this weekend with a victory on the road at Auburn, but it was another close win for the Bulldogs. This was a game they were trailing in and honestly looked like they were going to be on upset watch. It looks like Auburn was going to have enough to pull off the upset. Georgia ended up pulling out the late victory by scoring a touchdown with a couple minutes to go, but it was another game in which Georgia just didn't look all that great. They've won back-to-back national championships, they're undefeated, so for that reason I'm going to keep them at number 1, but again, they're making it really difficult for me to keep them in that spot. I got Texas moving up all the way to number 2 as they had a very impressive 40-14 victory over Kansas. I get that Kansas was without Jalen Daniels, but this was a game that Texas pretty much dominated from start to finish. Their offense was fantastic as they had 33 first downs and over 660 yards of total offense. Meanwhile on defense, they held the Jayhawks to only 11 first downs and only 260 total yards. We're almost at the halfway mark of the season and Texas is looking like probably the most complete team in all of college football right now. Florida State was off this weekend, so here's where I got them ranked. Ohio State was also off this weekend, so here's where I got them ranked as well. Michigan cruised to yet another easy victory as they took down Nebraska 45-7. JJ McCarthy was nearly perfect as he had only 4 incompletions on the day. He had only 200 yards of total offense with 3 touchdowns, but he wasn't really needed at all. As a team, the Wolverines rushed for 250 yards with 3 rushing scores, but it was their defense that really won this game. They held Nebraska to only 10 first downs and only 7 points that came all the way at the very end with a meaningless touchdown. Michigan is pretty much dominating every game this season, but they've yet to play a really good opponent, so I do want to pump the brakes with them just a little before I get too excited. This game turned out to be a lot closer than it needed to be as USC defeated Colorado 48-41. It looked like USC was going to blow Colorado out of the water as they led 48-21 with only 2 minutes left in the third quarter, but Colorado outscored them 21-0 the rest of the way and made this a game in the final minutes. Caleb Williams did Caleb Williams things as he threw for 400 yards with 6 passing touchdowns. We know that this USC offense is probably the best in all of college football, but man, this defense is really worrisome. I mean, sure, USC can make the college football playoff, they could even make the championship game. With how bad this defense looks though, I don't know if they have what it takes to win it all this year. This one was a little bit surprising as Washington defeated Arizona by only 7 points. Washington looked good for the entirety of this game, but they allowed the Wildcats to hang in there the entire way. Michael Penix Jr. was great once again as he completed 75% of his passes, throwing for 363 yards. But it was his first game of the season where he didn't have a passing touchdown. I still think Washington is a championship contender, but this game was just a little bit concerning on my end. Early on, it was looking like the Oregon Ducks might be on potential upset watch on the road at Stanford. In the second quarter, they were trailing 6-0 and their offense looked like they stayed in Eugene. But they completely turned things around and they ended up outscoring Stanford 42-0 the rest of the way. Bo Nix was great again as he threw for 300 yards with 4 passing touchdowns. Meanwhile, Oregon's defense had another solid performance as they held the Cardinal to only 220 yards of total offense. Penn State was really struggling early on against Northwestern as this game was actually tied at the half. But in the second half, Penn State completely took control of this game, outscoring the Wildcats 31-3, picking up the very comfortable victory. The offense really turned things around in the second half, and the defense continues to look like one of the best in the Big Ten and one of the best in all of college football. For the second consecutive week, it looked like Notre Dame was going to have a heartbreaking loss. Instead, they turned things around and gave Duke a heartbreaking loss. With the game looking like it was all but over, Sam Hartman delivered one of the best runs you'll see all season. Then Audric Estime delivered the dagger touchdown to put Notre Dame ahead. This was a tough game for the Irish as it looked like Duke was going to pull off the victory, but they made the plays when it mattered most at the very end, something they weren't able to do last week against Ohio State. Things weren't looking good, but Notre Dame and their playoff chances somehow managed to stay alive in this game. Before we get to the rest of my rankings, I like to share with you guys how you can win money during the college football season. I've partnered with Underdog Fantasy to bring you this amazing deal. If you download the Underdog Fantasy app and use promo code Harris, they'll match your first deposit up to $500. Yep, they're giving you $500 of free money. I've had a lot of success recently with college football and the NFL, and you can do the exact same with Underdog. Use promo code Harris for a 100% deposit match up to $500. This deal only lasts through the end of next week though, so you guys better sign up quickly. You can also sign up using the link in my description as well. After doubting Alabama, they continued to make me eat my words as they picked up a very impressive 23-point victory on the road at Mississippi State. Jalen Milroe had a fantastic game as he threw for 165 yards with only 2 incompletions. He was also Alabama's leading rusher, rushing for 70 yards with 2 scores. The Tide also held this Mississippi State offense in check a week after they had one of the best performances of any team in college football. They held the Bulldogs to only 15 first downs and 260 yards of total offense. They also were able to force 3 turnovers as well. Washington State didn't play this weekend, so here's where I got them ranked. After last week's close loss to Washington State, Oregon State bounced back with a very impressive victory. They took down Utah 21-7. This was a game that the Beavers controlled the entire way, and they looked like the better team for 100% of the game. The offense didn't do a whole lot, as they had only 15 first downs and 350 yards of offense with 3 scores, but it was their defense that completely eliminated the Utes in this game. They held Utah to under 200 yards of total offense, and they held them to 2 of 13 on third down attempts. Just like that, Oregon State is right back in the Pac-12 discussion. Oklahoma had another dominating victory as they took down Iowa State by 30 points. Dillon Gabriel was fantastic once again as he threw for 370 yards with 3 passing scores. We know that Oklahoma has one of the more explosive offenses in all of college football, but once again, it was their defense that stepped up and really helped them pick up this victory. North Carolina didn't play this weekend, so here's where I got them ranked. Missouri continues their undefeated season as they move to 5-0 with a 17-point victory at Vanderbilt. Brady Cook was fantastic once again for the Tigers as he threw for 400 yards with 4 passing touchdowns. Luther Burden III continues to add to his resume as he's been arguably one of the best wide receivers in all of college football this season. He caught 11 passes for 140 yards with 2 passing touchdowns. There are now 3 undefeated teams left in the SEC: Georgia, Kentucky, and Missouri. Speaking of Kentucky, they dominated Florida from start to finish as they defeated the Gators by 20 points. It wasn't a great game for Devin Leary as he completed only 9 of 19 passes for a very nice 69 yards with a passing touchdown. It was the rushing attack, mainly Ray Davis, that pulled out the victory for the Wildcats. Davis ran for 280 yards with 3 rushing scores. I mean, seriously, it was Ray Davis that defeated the Gators himself. Like I just mentioned, Kentucky is one of only 3 teams left in the SEC that is undefeated. After last week's tough loss at Alabama, Ole Miss bounced back with a very impressive victory over number 13 LSU. This game was a shootout that truly was going back and forth. I mean, LSU had over 600 yards of total offense and they still lost. But that's because Ole Miss had over 700 yards of total offense in this game. Jackson Dart threw for just under 400 yards with 4 passing touchdowns, while also adding 50 yards on the ground with a rushing score as well. Meanwhile, you look at Ole Miss's rushing attack. Quinshon Judkins rushed for just under 200 yards with a rushing score. Ulysses Bentley IV also added 100 yards on the ground with a rushing score as well. Ole Miss has one of the best offenses in all of college football, and with this win, they're right back in the SEC discussion. Tennessee continues to improve after that loss to Florida a couple weeks ago as they knocked off South Carolina 41-20. Joe Milton threw for 250 yards with a passing touchdown, while the Vols rushed for nearly 250 yards on the ground with 3 rushing scores. Although the offense was impressive for Tennessee in this game, it was their defense that was probably even more impressive. They held this Gamecocks offense to only 11 first downs. They held Spencer Rattler to only 170 yards through the air. They also forced South Carolina to go 2 of 15 on third down as well. Utah suffered their first loss of the season as they fell on the road to Oregon State by 2 scores. Once again, Cameron Rising was ruled inactive for this game, so the Utes had to turn to Nate Johnson, who continues to be a very underwhelming quarterback. He was awful as he completed only 8 of his 23 passes. Meanwhile, for the Utes, they had absolutely no rushing attack at all as they rushed for only 57 yards on 32 carries. Utah's hopes are still alive for the Pac-12 title game, but until Cameron Rising returns, I just don't know how much farther Utah is going to be able to go. LSU suffered their second loss of the season, but this one was right there for the taking for them. They gave up the lead with 40 seconds left in this game, and they had a chance to win it all as time expired, but they didn't have a miracle in them. Jaden Daniels did all he could as he threw for 400 yards with 4 passing touchdowns while rushing for 100 yards with a rushing score as well. I mean, seriously, what the offense did in this game will win you a ball game about 99% of the time. They had 33 first downs, 650 yards of total offense, and only 1 turnover. But like I mentioned, it was Ole Miss's offense that was even better, so LSU just couldn't do enough. Although the Tigers have been an impressive team this season, this marks their second loss of the year. But they do only have 1 loss in conference play, so their hopes aren't shot just yet. Miami was off this weekend, so here's where I got them ranked. Fresno State moved to 5-0 on the season as they took down Nevada 27-9. Mikey Keene threw for just under 300 yards with 2 passing touchdowns. Overall, I thought it was actually kind of an underwhelming game by Fresno State. I mean, they were favored in this game by 24 points, and I thought after finally entering the top 25, they might want to earn some style points. Nevada's 0-5, so beating them by only 16 points isn't all that impressive. But still, I like Fresno State a lot this year, so that's why I got them still in my top 25. Duke was literally seconds away and 1 stop away from pulling off the massive upset. Instead, they ended up losing to Notre Dame, and they dropped their first game of the season. Riley Leonard had just an okay game, but it looked like he had done enough to pull off the victory for the Blue Devils. He threw for 140 yards with a passing touchdown, and was the team's leading scorer with just under 100 yards on the ground. If the Blue Devils just get 1 4th down stop, when they pretty much should have, they win this game and they're 5-0, and just like that, they're climbing up in the rankings and are probably just outside the top 10. Instead, they're 4-1 on the season, and they're just hanging around in the top 25. But I guess the good news for them is that they're still undefeated in conference play, so their ACC title hopes are still alive. I'm going to have Louisville entering the top 25 for the first time this season. They moved to 5-0 on the year after their victory against NC State. Jack Plummer threw for just under 300 yards with a passing touchdown, and surprisingly, it wasn't the offense that won this game. The Cardinals' offense was actually pretty quiet as they had only 13 total points and 300 yards of total offense, but their defense had their best showing of the entire season. They held NC State to only 9 first downs, including only 200 yards of total offense. There's a lot of teams we keep talking about in the ACC, but I think it's time we finally put some respect on Louisville. I mean, they're one of only 4 undefeated teams left in the conference, and they have the most ACC wins so far this season. Well, those are my top 25 teams after week 5. Was there a team I had ranked too high or ranked too low? Or was there a team that didn't crack my top 25 at all that definitely should have been in here? Whoever it is, let me know in the comment section down below. Before you leave, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on those notifications if you're new to my channel. I'm posting college football videos every day during the season, so make sure to subscribe so you never miss a video. Also, don't forget to drop a like on this video as well. It helps out with that YouTube algorithm and helps share the video with more college football fans. Plus, it only takes a second to do. As always, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you all in my next video.